A North Carolina police officer accused of killing an unarmed former football player who may have been seeking help after a car accident is in court this hour. Officer Randall Kerrick is charged with voluntary manslaughter. Police say Kerrick fired his weapon 12 times that night, hitting 24-year-old Jonathan Ferrell 10 times. According to police, Ferrell, having just survived a car accident, a serious accident, walked about a half mile before stopping at a home in Charlotte for help. Well, the owner of that home called 911, believing that someone was breaking into her home. The officers encountered Ferrell about a block away from the house and say he was running towards them. That is when police say Kerrick opened fire. Now, Ferrell's family is calling for a thorough investigation of this case.
My son was a great guy. He was going to be, I believe in my heart, a very successful man. His goal was to work and become a businessman so I would never have to work.
This is an everyday American, and that should be just appalling and scary, intimidating, frightening for the public as it is for us.
Eli Portillo is a reporter with the Charlotte Observer, joins me now. Eli, thank you for the time here. We know that this court is playing out right now. We'll have an update. But do we know any more of what Officer Kerrick has said happened that night?
We don't, and my understanding is a little while ago we learned that he would not actually be appearing in person for this initial procedural court hearing, and his attorney would be appearing on his behalf.
And the authorities are, and if this is correct, they're debating whether to release the 911 call. But do we know any more about Kerrick's background while on the force?
Yes, Officer Kerrick joined the force in 2011. He was initially an animal control officer before becoming a full police officer, and we learned that he was suspended for an unspecified infraction for 8 hours in December. We believe that was a minor infraction because that's usually what an 8-hour suspension indicates.
Were there other officers at the time who responded with him?
Yes, Kerrick was one of 3 officers on the scene. The other one, Thornell Little, fired a taser to try to stop Mr. Ferrell, who was advancing. The taser didn't work, and we don't know if the taser hit him or missed him, but the 3rd officer didn't.
You say that it did not stop him, that he advanced on them. Is there any indication that there was a hostile action here?
No.
Okay.
What the police said is, first the police said that he charged, and that was their word, towards the officers. Now they're saying he advanced towards Officer Kerrick. He was not armed at the time.
Supposed to run for you. Help, help, help.
We'll see what happens in court, but again, this officer now charged with unlawfully discharging his weapon during this encounter. He's been charged with fatally shooting this young man, and will continue to follow this case as the family certainly deserves justice and says that that is what they want.
Into it. There's action happening. There are 26 police chiefs in this country right now trying to figure out how to make sure black people aren't shot because they're feared for no reason. And we actually aren't doing the same thing for civilians.
Yeah. And so we have a situation in which, and we talked about this yesterday, we were talking about a study of New York City police officers in which one study over a period of time, 34% of the bullets they discharged and firing actually found their way into the person they were trying to hit. That is an actual study of actual NYPD police officers discharging their weapons, and you're thinking, like, what is happening in the hands of other folks?
Well, and also, Chris, I mean, you hear stories like this, and my first reaction was, that's tragic. And then also, how is it that the stories of the vulnerable and the victims have become sort of dismissed nationally as the stuff of folklore and happenstance, and that the laws are created around, they're preemptively punitive, and they don't take these stories into consideration anymore, and these are almost seen as outliers when in fact they are more often than not the norm.
And this is and what we see here is the classic case of suspicion hanging on the black man, right? Where he's in a car crash, it's early in the morning, he knocks on someone's door for help, she calls the cops.
Slams the door in his face, calls the cops, which, all right, 2:30 a.m., I might slam Ranger's face.
Right.
That's not really the issue. It's calling the cops on a potential break-in. We don't even know there's a break-in. Then what happens when they show up and he's running, he's just been in an accident, right? So obviously...
A really bad accident.
A really bad accident where he probably had to crawl out of the back window. The car was so smashed. But this is breathing while black.
Right.
This is breathing while black. And that's why we have...
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. we are faced with a world that is a river of sorrow, and it is, and you and I sit here and we fish certain things out, and bad things happen every day. And across the street over at Fox News, right, they went on this crazy summer-long thing where they were like, any time a white person was shot or
false equivalent
or assaulted by an African American, it was like that was their lead story, right? And so, what do you say when you turn around and it's like, why are you making a big deal about this person? This is a horrible thing that went down. The cop happened to be white. The suspect happened to be black. Like, what is your deal? What is the response to why this is legit?
Do you care whether black people who are innocent are being killed? I mean, that's really the question. So, because once you deflect it to there was an innocent white victim, and there certainly are, right? There are people who are white in this country who are killed who shouldn't be. But the question is, do we care when everyone is killed? 345% more likely to be acquitted on stand your ground if the victim is black.
I want to read the statistic. This comes from that study we just talked about in the previous block when we were talking to Lucia. So, when an older white man shoots a younger black man with whom he had no prior relationship, the shooting is determined justifiable 49% of the time. Yet when the situation is reversed, an older black man shoots a younger white man with whom he had no previous relationship, the homicide is only judged justifiable 8%.
And that's the whole problem here, is that context and history are taken completely out of the equation, and that, I think, is a bastardization of justice and also prosecution in the criminal system that we have in the United States. I mean, the idea that race isn't a part of this is not an accurate, I mean, that is, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I agree with you. You were right, Alex Wagner.
It was even more bizarre because some of Fox News commentators, Sean Hannity being one of them, said black people benefit from stand your ground when it flies in the face of the facts. And I think the real question here is, are we going to have an honest conversation in this country about what's happening for people, or are we not? And
there is such a defensive, preemptively punitive laws and a defensive crouch that is almost built in to the position of those at Fox News from the beginning, regardless of how justified it may or may not be.
And that defensive crouch is what we see also in the aftermath of these shootings. It's what we see in the that is the feeling that everybody has to kind of run to the barricades, and one side is much more successful in those barricades than the other. I mean, the side that is defending maximalist gun laws wins all these battles. But it also sort of feels like, what are we, one of the things I always want to say here also is that the context is violence in this country is going down and crime is going down, and that's an amazing thing. We are making progress because I think you have to preserve the sense that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that we are marching towards something that is better.
Yeah, but I think you also have to talk about what it is like to be a black man in America, and I'm not sure that picture is getting better.
The discussion today is we assume that we're only talking about people of color if we're talking about race. Right. Part of what we're saying is we have to look how we're all impacted, and we have to make sure we're all getting taken care of. That means anywhere we see disproportionate bad stuff happening, no matter whom it is, we should pay attention to it. So we should pay attention in D.C. when these 15 people get shot. We should pay attention when black people are dying. 45% of all youth who are killed in gun violence are black. 45%. Do we care?
Yes.